This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us and WZRD via Zoom, Frankie, Charles, and Nat Gidron. Hello, Nat and Frankie. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, good, good.
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Very, very well. So good to have you. It's we love talking with students about how deeply they become involved with the community. So first we learned of you is that you did so much great work in the Highland Park Juneteenth event. So tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about yourself first, and how did you become involved in a Juneteenth event? Are the two of you from Highland Park?
Frankie,
Yeah.
do you want to start first?
Sure. Yeah. So I am from Highland Park, graduated from Highland Park High School in 2014. I've since moved. I live in Minneapolis now, so that's where I'm calling in from. But essentially came home for the pandemic, and as things progressed in Minneapolis after the murder of George Floyd, some community members came to me, and given the fact that I'm a theater practitioner, a theater maker by trade, and have some event experience. And so they asked if I could help host this event, and was able to get the student organizers, because it was sort of it was something that came out of the community from, it started as a march, and then it went from just a Black Lives Matter in March to a Juneteenth event, and we've been lucky enough to be able to continue it for the last couple of years, and we're going to do it again this year, so that's really exciting for us. Nat, go ahead.
Yeah, so similar to Frankie, I went to Highland Park as well, and I actually was part of the march, and I went to go speak up about it. And then some of the high schoolers from Highland Park High School asked me if I could volunteer to do some of the work for the Juneteenth event. And then I decided that I kind of wanted to help Frankie as well to, make the Juneteenth event what it is and what it's going to be continuing on.
Mm-hmm. So the first Juneteenth event was actually in 2020 then. There weren't any before that, were there?
No, there were not any before then. It was a really, really awesome, unsanctioned event that we were able to pull off in the middle of the pandemic. And we're very lucky to be able to do it again in 2021. And we're excited to do it in 2022.
Was it a virtual event then, since it was the pandemic?
No, we did it outside in a park, in Sunset Park, out in Highland Park, and it was a really lovely time. We had music, and I think we got pizza.
Yeah, we had pizza at the end. At that time, we had to really focus on the COVID regulations. So we put dots all over the place, just to make sure everyone knew what 5 feet was. We made sure everyone was wearing masks that first year. And then the second year, COVID regulations started to dial back a little bit. So we had more leniency that second year around.
Mm-hmm. So how did the event grow from 2020 to 2021?
It's a steady growth. We had a lot of interest in 2020. A lot of people from Highland Park not necessarily knowing what Juneteenth was or its significance, and got a couple of more folks that second year, and it's been good. The schools have been really supportive in like in their students, in making sure that the student groups are well supported and stuff like that, even when it's the summertime. So that's really cool. And that's not necessarily something that I don't think all schools do that. And I think it's really awesome of Highland Park to be so conscious of their social standing. And so it's really cool to come from a high school, and like, I was not this involved in high school when I was there. So it's really kind of nice to be able to come back and just be there for the community, the kids of color at Highland Park High School that don't always get to feel the love, I think.
So it seems as if none of this would have happened if it weren't for the killing of George Floyd then.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it launched the community to act in some way. And I think it was a well-intentioned first try, because it really did start with a bunch of parents in the community wanting to do something that did end up being the march. And from the march, we were able to grow just in the folks that we were talking to, because other than the one or two other students that those parents were able to get into contact with via someone from the high school, I was like the only other person of color in the conversation. And so when Nat joined, I was like, okay, cool, because I don't even live in the state anymore. And so it's like, I love coming back and I love being there for my community, but the conversation needs to start really in Highland Park and to continue in Highland Park. And the folks in that community need to understand that this isn't going to go away.
Yeah, we kind of just wanted to keep the momentum, unfortunately, like Frankie said, it started with the death of George Floyd, but as someone who grew up in Highland Park and had to deal with the microaggressions, I was just like, well, this is our time to be heard. This is the time to stand up and, keep the momentum going. So like, you're either on the train or you're not, but it's in your face now. You see it. It's not going away. So, it's time to stand up for the right thing and learn about other people's experiences. It's really what this came to be.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there has always been microaggressions. So you saw those and you felt those. How did you feel that it changed and let's say parents wanted to do a march and then give recognize the situation and speak on the situation, do something about the racial situation? How did you see people change in Highland Park?
I would say that march, it was like the first time that I've ever seen like the community like rile together for the life of a Black individual, because like obviously before George Floyd, there was Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and like all these other people that, experienced what George Floyd experienced at the hands of the cops, but no one talked about it. So I don't know what it was about this whole George Floyd situation that really opened people's eyes to it. But I would say that was like the spark that saw in some people that, hey, this is for real. I mean, I don't know if Frankie, you want to speak to that as well.
Well, from my perspective, I think a lot of parents in the community were worried that their kids were going to be or like if they didn't do anything, parents were worried about the view of their children and what their children would experience. And I think that is part of what drove the initial march, was a bunch of parents not wanting their kids to be racist. And just having the awareness that like if they didn't say something, that would be the default opinion, is that they would be racist. And it sparked action, so I'm not going to complain. It needed to happen. And I think to Nat's point, like, it is unfortunate that it took so long, because it's not like this is a new thing for our society, but given the national push for recognition and space and healing for the Black community, just what we could do in Highland Park, given how the demographics are, I think we did show up pretty well. And I am proud of our community for doing that, but I do expect more. Like, this doesn't let them off the hook. And yeah, I look forward to watching them grow, just since I've left. And yeah, like, I left Highland Park back in like 2016, more or less officially. And it was a very different place when I came back in 2020. And for that, I'm glad, because if it had stayed stagnant, I think we'd be having a very different interview right now. But I look forward to seeing where the community goes with their new understanding, and I hope they all take it very seriously, because again, people of color, Black folks, Indigenous folks, we're not going anywhere. So
Do you know if they reach out to you, because you are an alumnus and then you are a person of color, but do you think that is why, or why did they reach out to you specifically to help with this event, Frankie?
well, that's, yes. So on top of being an alum and a person of color, I'm also trans. And so some people like to call me a unicorn, in that I check multiple boxes. And so being aware of that, and also being aware of my light skin privilege, as like, my family is Afro-Caribbean. I am the lightest one. So I recognize that there are a lot of doors open to me that my mother or my grandfather or what have you would not have had the access to. And so I am very aware of that. And I do my best to not let people feel comfortable with just allowing me to be in a space, because I am not the bare minimum of what they can be doing. They can be doing more, and I will force them to do more. At this point in my life, I work for an opera company. So being in such a predominantly white space, I am well aware of the kinds of resources that people have available. And I am not afraid to make a case. And often people cannot argue my case. And yeah, and it's in 2020, it was a lot to recognize the sort of privilege that allowed, but then also attempting to give the space that needed to be there for the students that were actively in high school at that time and actively experiencing these things. And just knowing that when the opportunity arises, that there are people in the community ready to stand up with them, I thought was important. So
Did parents or the high school administrators come to you, or did you know about it and then offered your services? What happened? Because they did find a very good person to help out with this.
It was a teacher who had recently retired, reached out to me, and she had been a very big part in keeping the school socially aware of the things going on. Nat, would you agree? Was it Mary Pike that pulled you to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Mary and Mari too. They were both like, yeah, thank you for the help. Like the first time, they was just like, come back and do it again. And that's kind of what got me going. And also working with Frankie the first time too. Very organized guy, very organized. So I was just like, of course I would want to be a part of this and like, say my word, because like Juneteenth is to celebrate African Americans. So to be part of something like that and to bring it to Highland Park to make them aware of my history, was just like, there's no way I would turn that down. And I love Mary for that, keeping the conversation going even at the school.
So Mary was both of your teachers then when you were in Highland Park High School. She taught the two of you.
I wouldn't say she was my teacher. She was more like a mentor. Like whenever I didn't want to go to class, even though I'm supposed to be in class, or like, just have someone to hang out with for lunch, I would go to Mary and just be like, hey, I'm going to come do homework now. So we'll just sit there and talk for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mary, and Nat, this may have changed, but she had been working in the like AV room when I was in high school. Yeah. And so it's like every now and then I'd pass that room and she'd be like, hey, Frankie. And she knew me from a family friend in the community. And so would always try to get me to go to meetings for things. But I was very enthralled in theater in high school. And so that sort of kept my attention. But I'm glad that she was there, because without her, we wouldn't have made this connection. And I don't think we would have necessarily made the event happen. So thank you, Mary.
Definitely. Nat, you said that there was microaggression, and then after George Floyd's death, and then all your work in with the Juneteenth event and in the community, did you find that the microaggression lessened, or maybe people were like more aware of what they were doing so that they don't commit microaggression?
I can't really speak to after the death of George Floyd, because I actually live here in Chicago now. After I graduated, I moved out. So like I went back to the march and for the Juneteenth event because that's something that I wanted to help out with. So as far as like in the community at the school, I'm sure that microaggressions still happen, even if they like, whether we want to realize that or not, I'm sure it still happens. Just the nature of things, and how, when everything, because I don't want to say it was like this, but it was kind of like this, if we're going to be honest. The social media really boosted George Floyd's death. So everybody wanted to jump onto that bandwagon, going back to Frankie's point, and nobody wanted to be seen as racist. If they're not posting it on social media, if they're not doing the Blackout Tuesday, if they're not doing this, they're not doing that, they're not using their voice, then at the time they were seen as, oh, you're a little sketch. But now that the conversation has kind of stopped, there are the same people that were posting for the Blackout Tuesday or was posting things in petitions on their page are not doing those same things anymore. So, I mean, you could wonder, like, are those things still happening? And I think, yes, I still think they're happening. Obviously, I'm not affected by those same things in that community anymore because I don't live there. But I'm sure POC students at Highland Park pretty much feel that even after all of this has been done.
Mm-hmm. Frankie, you mentioned the demographics. What are the demographics in Highland Park now?
Highland Park now, when I was there, it was definitely predominantly white. Predominantly white, with a decent Black American population, and Hispanic coming up right up like next to that. AAPI folks a little less so, and I mean, so my family's like lived in the area since the 60s, so I've got a kind of interesting understanding of the demographics of Highland Park. My mom had gone to the high school back in the day. And from what I could understand from back then is a lot of the diversity was coming from the Fort Sheridan. That, I believe, is still true. And yeah, it made things a little uncomfortable for some of the people, but I think having the fort in Highland Park and in the high school is what strengthens the high school's demographics. Like, it would have been really boring to be in high school without other people of color. Speaking as someone who was one of the only brown people in elementary and middle school for like a solid couple of years, it was pretty terrible. And going into high school and seeing that there were other people like me changed the game. And yeah, unfortunately, like Nat said, I do think people are probably still experiencing microaggressions, but I do think the administration at the school is a little bit better at noticing what those are and maybe reacting a lot better, instead of the not at all that I'm sure was definitely happening back in the day.
It was a couple of students or a couple of, because I think I heard mentioned that there were a couple of students that wanted to do a march protesting George Floyd's death, but did it end up being parents that wanted to do more?
It was parents who wanted to do something, and then I believe the course of events was Mary Pike got involved and was like, y'all need some students to make this feasible. And then yeah, we were sort of brought in as like older adulter type folks. And yeah, so it gave me hope, knowing that there were parents that were very, very aware of how this would affect their kids as they grew up. And they're still like, I'm still in conversation with those same parents. It's really lovely.
So you had students in there, and then probably they were, it was kind of new for them. How was their reaction, especially when last year, Nat, you put together the privilege walk? What transpired?
With that, I really enjoy doing that. You know, it's one way to make white people uncomfortable when you actively see your privilege. You know, it was me and one of the other high school students, Mari. We read off the questions, and obviously you have your POC people in the back, because that's what the privilege walk is, to like explicitly show you what privilege is. And then you have white women towards the middle to front, and then on top is white men. And you know, we explain that a lot, but to actually see it, I definitely felt like some people were like, they knew they had privilege. Actually speaking to one of the guys, he was like, I knew I had privilege, but like seeing it like this, you know, it's tough, and I want to use this privilege for something good, because, you know, I don't want to be seen like, you know, that white alpha male who is just like there and just complacent with everything, you know. And I could tell he genuinely meant it, you know. He was choked up a little bit about it, and just getting the community engaged that way, I thought that was something really special to add to the event for that second year, just because of the fact that like we've been saying, you know, it's not going to go away, and to explicitly put that in your face like that, I think that was really important and sobering, as you said.
So the white males that were in the front that were very affected, were they parents, were they volunteers, or with community, or were they students?
I would say it was community members, and also one of my good friends. He participated in the event, and he was up front too, and he spoke a little bit about it. But I'm always on him. he realizes that. So he knew where he was going to stand, even when we started the event. So that was nice to like see him engage with that too. So I would say it was a mix of community members, parents, students, volunteers. Like there's quite a few people who participated. I was running back and forth, passing the mic to get everyone to speak.
What was the reaction of the students? Did they say that open their minds or anything?
I would say it led for a great conversation. Obviously, the break the barrier after we finished all the questions and the initial reaction to let it sink in. But after we broke the barrier and we were able to start the discussion, they were like, I'm glad we're talking about this. It's something that's really important to continue talking about. And I got a lot of reactions from parents outside of the activity too. And they were just like, really great job and well-spoken with everyone who was participating in the event as well.
How did you get the PLC speakers? Which speakers did you get?
Can you praise that question? Like the PLC speakers for the event, or?
Yes, you said that you got a couple of PLC speakers for the event to put more insight into the privilege walk as well, right?
Yeah, so like those are people in the community. Like, so basically what I did was like before the event, I said, gave a disclaimer that this is some pretty heavy stuff, but I would like majority of you guys to come participate in this event. We did kids 11 and older, just so like they could have I think, at a certain age, you start to realize that, things aren't just gray. Things aren't just black and white, there's a whole bunch of other things in between. So I just like made a disclaimer and I told anybody who would like to participate, please participate in this event. And I was glad to see that a lot of people of color and white people were participating in that section of the event.
How many attendees approximately would you say in the 2020 and in the 2021 event, if you still remember? No need for an exact number.
I want to say it was like a very solid family event both years. So I'll say like 25 to 50, maybe both years. Feels right. And that second year we did have the Jesse White tumblers, which I think brought a slightly larger crowd, which was fun. But yeah, it's because the march had a bunch of people. But the Juneteenth event, we market it as a like a family friendly little like lunch midday kind of thing. And it's just been really nice.
Yeah.
In 2020, was it first a march and then an event? Was it like both?
It was first the march, and then we had the Juneteenth event. It was like a week or two after the march. There was the sort of idea of just sort of continuing our activism and taking it that extra step further, and just doing a little thing for the community, and it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What about in 2021? Was there any march in 2021?
No march.
No march. Mm-hmm. The Jesse White tumblers, how did they get in? Was it on account of the Tenth Dems? Because somehow, Frankie, was it your work that you got them involved in promoting the event as well?
Oh no, it was either one of the students who are currently graduating. I believe most of them are graduating this year. Or one of the parents that suggested that it had been a while since they'd seen the Jesse White tumblers, and like that was an incredibly fair statement. It's been years since I had seen them too. And so it was just kind of really cool to connect with a local staple.
Mhm. Who invited them? Was it you, Frankie?
I think it was Mari.
Yeah, it was Mari. We met in a group before, like we were trying to plan out. And I think it was Mari. She contacted them, emailed them.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, but they're very, very easy to get a hold of and very lovely to interact with.
Yes, yes. I saw them once too. It was awesome. Really, really so much fun and so inspiring. What about the 10 Dems? How did they come to promote the event? Do you know, Frankie? Because you're active in that side.
Yeah. So essentially the event isn't something that we in the past have allowed politicians to speak at. They are welcome to show up too. And so in that vein, I believe one of the parents reached out to on Facebook or something and posted the event details there, just letting folks know that this was happening. And Eric Reinhardt has shown up to one or two of them, and he's been really lovely. And like the politicians are an interesting type of person to speak to, but they're lovely. They're nice enough. But yeah, it is not something that we intend for politicians to promote themselves in. It's definitely community based. They're happy, like we're happy to, they want to show up, they can, but they're not the focus. It's definitely the community. It's definitely Juneteenth. Having them there, I guess, is just, it's good for them.
Mhm. So I guess what you meant was that one of the parents posted about the Juneteenth event, and then the parent probably was connected with the 10 Democrats, and then the 10 Democrats saw it, and then they shared from there.
Mhm.
Did
Yeah.
they actually create the flyer for you too? Because it seemed as if there was like a very nice flyer as well.
I think one of the parents made those.
Oh,
It's the student group.
Or was it a student group? Okay, yeah.
oh,
There's
wow.
ideas going around before we finalize the flyer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So do you see that there seem to be more students being involved in extracurriculars now, that you have this Juneteenth event recurring year to year?
I think that we will have a better idea of that come the event, because
Mhm.
as of right now, between the parents and the students, the folks in between tend to have more bandwidth, and I say that as I say that with a disclaimer. The folks in between tend to have more bandwidth to be able to organize and start conversations. It's sort of what Nat and I do. So I am primarily like, okay, so we need this information by this date. Has anyone contacted the park district? Stuff like that. And then students will show up day of, and we will connect with them sort of on like a volunteer basis. And then we need to figure out how we're going to keep this going, because yeah, the kids who started this are graduating for the most part. So it'll be a very good conversation to have this year.
Yeah, no, I remember like after our last event, Mary was just like, Frankie, Nat, next year the girls are graduating, so it looks like it's on you guys. So it was like big responsibility, but we got to keep it going.
Yeah, no, and happy too. It's always fun. I'll be interested to see what kind of future community involvement we can get Highland Park as a city to get into, because it's always my goal to put it on them a little bit, a little bit more.
Always do it big for 4th of July. Why not Juneteenth?
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned the folks in between, does that mean you folks, or whom do you mean?
Oh yeah, I would mean me. So no kids, It's like, it's just me and my cat.
Me and my cat as well. So
Cool. So everyone in between has a pet. No
True.
kid, but a pet.
And let's pick your brains a little bit because you've done such a great job in organizing. Which group of people were the best contacts for reaching out into the community for volunteers and alumni? Was it someone like Mary Pike, or was there even more?
Oh, I'd say it was definitely Mary Pike. Mary knows everybody in Highland Park who like has been through the high school. I don't know how she keeps all of those people in her head, but it's definitely Mary Pike, and the students are happy to help. And like, I get it, being a student is difficult. I power to Nat for being a student and like a university student and doing all that you do. Because damn, I couldn't. When I was in college, it was tough. But yeah, the volunteer base with students is really good. And again, the parents are really, really wonderful. And as long as we can assist with the kids and stuff, and like most of the kids are of a reasonable age, like toddlers or older. And so it's just a really lovely little group of folks that we've got is sort of doing this thing.
Well, it seems as if Mary Pike cares a lot. That's why she remembers all of you, and it seems that she found herself a very good team too, because the two of you care as well very much. So let's give our listeners the date and time, and who is invited. Would the listeners be invited to go and check it out, or is it only a local event?
Oh no! If you can make it out to Highland Park, it's in Highland Park at Sunset Park on June 19th, which is a Sunday this year, from 11 to 2, I believe. And yeah, everybody's welcome. I will not promise that there will be food this year. I think the goal is to always have food because it's always fun. But yeah, and if folks want to reach out, the folks at Color of Equity on Facebook, some of them are connected to our organizing group. And then, I mean, folks can reach out to me, Frankie Charles, F Charles. I don't know. Should I plug myself? I don't.
Yes, go ahead, for sure. You could. Because people need the contact information for more details if they want to know, learn more information.
Yeah, no, definitely. People can reach out to me. FrankieC@myself.com is my email. Trudy and I have connected on Facebook, so feel free to tag me there. Yeah.
And what about the, are you going to, Nat, are you going to do the privilege walk this year, or how are you going to top that off?
See, I'm gonna have to go deep in the archives, figure out what I want to do this year. I mean, if we could do the privilege walk again, that'd be great, but maybe switch it up. I don't know. I'm still deciding what I want to do with that.
And what are the archives that you're talking about?
Pardon?
What archives are you talking about?
Just like different activities that's already been done before, if it's broken, don't change it. So looking at different activities to help bring awareness.
Okay, let's do a community assessment with you, the two of you too, because you're wonderful community members. WZRD Chicago, being a nonprofit radio station, must be responsible to the community we serve. WZRD is mandated to file quarterly issues with the FCC on non-entertainment, community-focused programming. And we like to assess the community for these quarterly issue topics with 3 questions. First, what is most important to you? It doesn't have to be Juneteenth, but what is most important to you in your life and what matters to you?
I would say my family, my friends, people that I interact with, and like just being able to get up every day, go to work, go to school. And yeah, I would say those are really important to me.
For me, I'd say living authentically and being able to show up to all of those things that Nat mentioned, and being confident in myself and my experience, because that's definitely not been something that has always been the case.
Mhm. The second question is, what longer term problem must we address?
Long-term problem, that's a hard one. I mean, first we could start with poverty, just in the US alone is ridiculous. So but those are really big issues that people aren't ready to talk about.
Right.
Yeah. Oof. Poverty is a big one. There's so much. There is so much. We could fill an entire season of podcasts or something with all of the things that we could need to fix.
Mhm. Yeah, too many. Well, that's an answer too. Just too many big problems to actually focus on one. Is what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then what about our third question is then what problem needs to be resolved now?
These are very abstract questions. For me, I would say just like being open to having conversations, because I feel like everyone's really sensitive nowadays. So like, you know, it starts with a conversation. Everything starts with a conversation. So being able to start those difficult conversations without people being offended by something that just needs to be talked about.
Mhm.
I would personally either love student loan forgiveness or or just some actual movement with the wage gap situation that goes on, because Lord knows it, like, could be making a little bit more money, things would be a little bit easier, and it would make the world go a lot easier.
Mhm. Yes. Wow, that kind of brings it full circle, because Nat, you're talking about relationships, and that helps a lot. Like conversations lead to relationships, and that leads to problem solving. And then for wages, if there weren't like conversations and people actually relating to each other and understanding, it's really hard to address the wage gap. So thank you so much for that. And we actually had some big names like Arnie Duncan. He mentioned that in order to resolve a lot of the problems of violence, etc., it needs to start with relationships. So the two of you, Frankie, Charles, and Nat Gidron, you are on it.
Thanks, Trudy.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We hope that you have a very, very awesome Juneteenth event on June 19th at the Sunset Park in Highland Park. And thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Maybe we'll have a follow-up interview on how everything comes out. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Cool.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be safe. Be safe. Thank you.